Warning. The following video contains strong language that some viewers may find offensive or disturbing.
What things did you do as a kid that you now realize is extremely weird? Found out that the air had germs in it and tried not to breathe too much. I remember asking the teacher, if we clap, are we killing germs, knowing full well what would happen? A class full of 9-year-olds clapping like morons to kill the evil germs. I used to waste a shit ton of water by turning on the shower and lay on the floor next to it with a towel over my body and fall asleep with a tiny bit of water splashing on my face. I used to imagine I was in a cave and it was raining outside for some reason. Ah, good times. Running any lollipop or sucker I ate under the faucet water after every lick because somehow it tasted better after being rinsed. Lol. It does taste better. I never did it on purpose, but if I dropped my lollipop on the ground I would wash it and it tasted great. A girl used to sit back to front on the toilet to pee. My reasoning was that way it sounded like my dad peeing and then the monsters wouldn't try to grab me. Childhood anxiety is wild. I used to have science experiments in the bathroom sink. Meaning, I'd go to the bathroom and lock the door. Once in, I'd make sure the sink drain was shut and then proceed to add every cleaner, chemical, shampoo etc. under the sink to the sink in hopes of a reaction. Never got one, but it also never stopped me from trying. In hindsight, I probably could have killed myself if I had mixed the wrong stuff. I obviously didn't. I did this too, then got a bunch of headaches and never did it again. Mind you, it did take a couple of headaches for me to realize me mixing random shit gave me headaches. Edit, I don't think it was ammonia and bleach just because of the era and location. Sometime in the 90s, in Ukraine, in a fairly poor neighborhood, I know for sure toothpaste was involved. Maybe some iodine, probably some sort of rubbing alcohol type stuff and shampoo. Also, while I stopped mixing bathroom items, I started mixing different foods. Then my friends and I would date each other to try the mixtures. I'm starting to wonder how I survived childhood. I used to like chewing sponges. Bath sponges. I'd get them wet, wring them out a bit, then put the whole thing or as much as possible in there and just chew. I used to eat tissues as a kid. My mom found out one day and yelled at me to stop. As any sane parent would do, so I started eating them in secret. Sneaking away with a tissue box to another room to eat a tissue or two. Until one day when I was about 5 years old I had to go to the hospital. I had no idea what was going on, all I knew was that I had trouble breathing through my nose. Before my operation I was in the hospital and I overheard one of the nurses say that they just needed to remove the excess tissue in my nose. Naturally I thought that the tissues I had eaten had started getting clogged up in my nose and I never ate a tissue again. I made the realization at 14 that it was muscle tissue in my nose and not the actual tissues I was eating. Edit, I'm glad to learn that I'm not alone with my strange habit. Also wanted to add that I saw some people mention getting tissue stuck in their ears, and I had a close call in primary school when I rolled a piece of paper into a really small ball and put it into my ear. If you haven't realized, I wasn't the brightest child, had to go to the medical bay to get it taken out with tweezers. I would wash things made of rubber. Like the kind of rubber that already feels slightly tacky. Then pat it dry with a really fluffy towel so the rubber would get kind of fuzzy from the towel fluff. Then I would just touch it until the fuzz wore off. Turns out I was just autistic and no one had figured it out yet. I still have a thing about textures, but in a much less weird way. I was to opposite. Textures like that make me really uncomfortable and used to make me feel very overwhelmed, so I'd try to either wash it till it went away or try to keep it constantly wet so I couldn't feel it as much. In grade 1 we would sit in a group on the floor in front of the teacher while she read us stories. I would sit at the back of the group against the wall and pull my pants halfway down my bum. I liked feeling the cool ground wall against my bare butt. For much of 2nd grade, for some reason, my parents let me pack my own lunch. I had 2 sandwiches of choice. One was what I called a triple butter sandwich, peanut butter, apple butter, and butter. A little strange, but okay. The other was a lettuce sandwich, white bread, mayo, and a few leaves of iceberg lettuce. I have no idea how they let me eat that for most of a full school year. Edit, Jesus Christ, this got a lot more replies than I thought it would. I have no regrets about the triple butter sandwich. Apple butter, if you've never had it, is pretty delicious, and I'm relatively sure I put butter in there just because it made sense. Because they were all butter, right? But it wasn't bad. Apple butter, to answer the frequent question, is sort of like an apple jam. Basically imagine the process for making applesauce, but you cook it down longer and it gets all caramelized and concentrated. It's great. It's more letting your kid make a sandwich from a little bit of lettuce that I question. I appreciate a lot of people saying it was good parenting because they were making sure I had something I'd eat. But you're being charitable. It was more that they weren't great parents and probably didn't pay attention. I wasn't a fussy kid at all. Unless you tried feeding me asparagus, I'd eat pretty much anything. And to the concerned Redditor who reached out to Reddit about me, that's kind of hilarious. I didn't know that people could see my eyes move and used to have my head in one direction and look with my eyes somewhere else. It wasn't before a girl saw me looking at her and said, "What are you looking at?" I figured that out. I was 7 or 8 years old and my mind was blown. My eyes move? I did this in school and was looking at a teacher in an inappropriate place and she called me out in front of the whole class. I hate child me. A few years ago, I was visiting my aunt and uncle, and they had some old film from the 80s of my extended family on a camping trip. There was a full playset there including a trampoline. And my mother was filming my cousins and I playing. I'm not sure why my aunt and uncle had the tape instead of my mother. But whatever, I was about 3 at the time. And my mother panned the camera away from my cousins playing on a swing set towards me on the trampoline. Except I was lying face down on the trampoline, full on thrusting my hips into it as hard as I could. Now, I don't specifically remember doing that, but I have a pretty good idea of how my little mind worked at the time. I'm certain that I was just trying to see if I could build up enough force to lift myself off the trampoline mat. Or flip myself over. Still, not exactly the best thing to be watching with your aunt and uncle, who threatened to save it and show at my wedding. Joke's on them, I pocketed the tape when they weren't looking. When I was around 4 to 5 years old, I remember I used to sneak downstairs very early in the morning and search for any cups with that 1/2 of cold sweet sugary coffee in, and drink them before anyone got up. Guess I may have been the youngest caffeine addict in Britain. Edit, back in the day my parents drank camp coffee. I don't know if this is available outside of the UK, but it's essentially a thick coffee syrup which you use with hot water and milk. I loved it. So much better than instant. Double edit, the hazards of doing this were higher than you might think. Both my parents were heavy smokers, so there was a high probability of there being a dog and cigarette butt dropped in a cup somewhere. I wasn't that thirsty. Several friends and myself had a fascination with writing in code. We had little pocket notebooks full of codes and deciphering instructions also in code, and would write volumes of notes between us in code. Notebooks got confiscated by a teacher. We wouldn't tell her how to decode. She tried to get us in trouble. Parents thought it was hilarious. I'm almost 60 and I still have one of these notebooks around somewhere. I used to eat mechanical pencil lead. No idea how I got into that habit, but I think I enjoyed the crunchiness of it. Did it for a little while, but showed a classmate and she immediately went to the teacher, who then called my mom, who scolded me and told me to stop. Goodbye 0.7 You will be missed. Saying some gibberish all the time and thinking that it is probably meaningful in some languages. I felt smart as hell. I used to make random noise and word combinations and get into really weird contorted poses to be the only one to ever do this. Single quote. Had an imaginary friend that I would make bets with, that I was guaranteed to win. The prize being ludicrous amounts of imaginary money. Hey Joe, I bet you $1 I can hold my breath for 3 seconds. God, I was rich back then. I also made dumb bets, but mine were always against the devil for my eternal soul. I lost the thing around age 11 when I put it up against me catching my bouncy ball 10 times in a row. Feels nice knowing I'm going to hell for being clumsy. Edit, can I trade Reddit silver for my soul back? PLZ. I would walk out the bathroom after taking a shit and spread my ass cheeks to whoever was in the living room and ask, "Is my butt clean?" One time it was the guy cleaning our carpet. I mixed ketchup and mustard together and called it my secret sauce. I used it as a dip for Fritos. I was convinced I'd make millions off it. When I was a wee lad I would wander about the house naked and pull back me foreskin to show visitors. I don't do that anymore though. I once took a dick pic on my dad's phone because I thought it would be funny. I was 7 and I didn't know what dick pics were or what pedophilia was or anything. My dad never brought it up. Update, I asked my dad about it. He doesn't remember it apparently. Thinking face. When I was in elementary school I would use one hand to cover my butt when I showered because I was afraid that a monster would warp through the bathroom wall and attack my butthole. When I was a kid. In the 80s, I had very strict teachers. Any form of back-talking or, God forbid, swearing, would get you a quick slap and a fast march to the head teacher's office to explain yourself. My teacher once sat me down for a talk, as happened fairly often, which was basically her just berating me. In the middle of this she suddenly stopped and told me I needed to keep my eyes under control. Because I had this terrible nervous habit of twitching my eyes when she was talking to me. In actual fact, I was tracing out imaginary swear words with my eyes. Basically, drawing out things like, piss off, and, shut up. Tracing the letters with my eyes as if they were right in front of her face. I didn't realize she could see my eye movements, I don't know why. As an adult it's obvious that my eyes were darting all over the place and looking crazy. But child me thought that it was subtle enough that it was unnoticeable. And that I was being super sneaky. As soon as I realized she could see it, I stopped. But looking back, probably the funniest part to me now is how much it must have unnerved her. And she never did know the reason for it. To her, I must have just been the weird kid with the crazy eyes. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and hit the notification button. See you next time.